The Godfather of touring cars, the spectacular little Italian is a legend, but his Formula 1 career looks disastrous on paper. But he is actually very underrated. Unfortunately for Gabriele Tarquini, he could only get drives with teams who had a budget of half a bottle of Fanta and a few biscuit crumbs, and so the cars he raced in were made of cracker bread and held together by hopes and dreams. He had little success in international F3000 with only the odd podium and 3 top 10 finishes in the final standings to show for it. His first start in Formula 1 was with the Osella team, where he raced once that year at the San Marino Grand Prix, ending in retirement with gearbox issues. Osella only really had one car that year for Alex Caffey, and it only made it to the finish of one race, in 12th. Tarquini actually qualified last for that race, 7 seconds behind the next car and 10 seconds behind Caffey. In 1988 he moved to Coloni for his first full season. He was the only driver for the team that year, with a best finish of 8th in Canada. 4 retirements and 8 did not qualify. His first race he qualified just 7 seconds slower than Senna. The first race he actually managed to finish was Mexico in 14th, just 5 laps off the leaders. With no funds for development, even after a solid start for a small team, the season was spent qualifying 6 to 7 seconds slower than the lead cars, if they qualified at all. Sadly, Tarquini was Coloni's most successful driver in Formula 1.
Here's a replay of Tarquini spinning off and taking Arnoux with him, and in the background Derek Warwick was involved.
In 1989, Tarquini signed for the First Racing team. He had raced for them before in International F3000. Unfortunately, their car was described as nothing more than an interesting flower pot. It failed a crash test and wasn't cleared to race. Unfortunately, after that, the first team fell apart. So, after missing the first race, Tarquini moved to AGS. And again, the season started well, scoring his first point in Mexico and beating his teammate Joachim Winkelhock in the first 7 races. These two would be 93 and 94 BTCC champs. Yannick Dalmas replaced Winkelhock as Tarquini's teammate and was much quicker, with Tarquini beating him 6-4 over the last 10 races in qualifying, but neither qualified for another race that year. The early part of this year proved Tarquini's talent, as he was close to points on a few occasions, but was let down by the car. 1990 and Tarquini remained at AGS with Dalmas as his teammate. The year wasn't much better and no points were scored, as the team spiralled towards destruction. Tarquini only qualified for 4 races and retired from 3, only finishing 1 Grand Prix in 13th. He beat Dalmas 9-6 in the qualifying race though.
And there's a replay. What a dreadful race for AGS. Tarquini goes off on the very first lap and Stefan Johansson didn't even start. So
Tarquini, for some insane reason, decided to stay with AGS for 1991. They had no money. The first race of the season, AGS couldn't afford to buy their employees food or drink. They had to pay out their own pockets. Look it up, it's true. Can you imagine someone like Racing Point doing that in 2019? There would be outrage. Gabriele Tarquini was joined by legend Stefan Johansson as teammate for the first 2 races, a man who obviously hated his wife if he was that desperate not to hang up his boots and retire. Tarquini would out-qualify Johansson by a second in both races, and Johansson would be replaced by Fabrizio Barbazza. It has to be said, with 2 cars entering every race, AGS would only qualify for 3 races that year, all driven by Tarquini. What a legend. He'd beat Barbazza 7-4 in the qualifying battle. 3 raced from the end of the season, and Tarquini would switch to the new Fondmetal team that had just brought the old Osella team, so it's kind of a return. Tarquini qualified for 2 out of the 3 races, finishing 11th and 12th.
So Ayrton Senna that is enabling him as Gabriele Tarquini retires the Fondmetal with the Ford HB engine for the first time in a race. And the young Italian, who deserves a better car and has got one this season, only lasted for some 24 laps and is out of the race. But
he stayed with Fondmetal for 1992, and he showed that he was a speedy driver on his day. Unfortunately, the car was unreliable. Tarquini retired from every race but one, where he finished 14th. They wouldn't finish the season. Tarquini out-qualified and outraced teammates Andrea Chiesa and Eric van der Poel in every race. I'm not sure if that's an achievement or not. He would get one more adventure in Formula 1 with Tyrrell team in 1995. The team were a shadow of their former selves by this point. He would replace Ukyo Katayama for 1 race after Katayama was advised not to race due to a crash at the Portuguese Grand Prix. Tarquini finished 14th, not bad for a one-off. So surely he was useless, only scoring 1 point and not even qualifying for most races, right? No, you fool. He was a quick driver in terrible cars. The 3 teams he raced for were rubbish, badly funded and dying out as a sport but more expensive. He did well with the tools he had, outpacing his teammates and finishing way higher than the car he was driving should have.
He did the S's! And look! Almost over on 2 wheels! But he gets in play of Tarquini's 2-wheeled Alfa Romeo. On the curb, almost over. Not quite.
After Formula 1, he would win the British touring cars in 1994, the European touring cars in 2003, the World Touring Cars in 2009, and the World Touring Car Cup in 2018. The man is a legend, and given the right opportunity, he may have found success in Formula 1. Gabriele Tarquini is underrated.